So I'm alive now. So how did you get onto this? Anyway, I'll ask you afterwards. You've got it on that. You sent it me.
Yeah, just to follow the document. So you need to log out as your Gmail and log in as ISKCON system. Yes. And what is the pop-up, Maharaj? You said you are getting some pop-up last time. Do you remember?
It's this, but I just had to move the scroll and it came out.
Yeah, we can move. Any pop-ups come in, we can move them, or we can minimize them.
But I couldn't get rid of it, and this were behind it, the start. But then I saw a little, very faint. I moved it along and it went across.
Okay. So, are you okay now?
I'm okay now. Now I'm on.
Okay. So you can just keep it like that. So.
Okay. Thank you.
You have only 4 minutes. So, and Maharaj, I brought buttermilk and sugar.
Oh, very good. Thank you.
So sugar I bought 4 packets.
Last me 3 months.
Yeah. So safe side, Yeah. So,
yeah, morning they have everything, but afternoon they may not. Okay, I'm not prepared for this now. I'm going to spend an hour preparing, but I've been an hour fiddling.
You can keep that like that,
Yeah, I'll not touch anything. Thank you, Radha. Thank you for setting me up.
Yeah,
Hare Krishna.
Could you please log out your Gmail? I still can't see live in YouTube.
Log out of Gmail.
Your Gmail. Go to Gmail account.
And here, this is it.
Yeah, the next tab. Yeah, click on that one. Okay. So yeah, that one, Dayananda Swami, click it.
Sign in.
Okay, you are not in. Remove, click remove. Sign out. Okay, that is ISKCON. Yeah, keep it like that. Hello. Okay, sir. Very good. Okay. Now, mobile no confused. Okay, right. Okay, right. Okay, Maharaj, you are online.
You can see me, can they?
Perfect. Yeah, because my wife called me and said, she can see me.
Hare Krishna, everybody. So we'll start with a little kirtan, and then we'll start the class. So 1 moment. Krishna Krishna Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna 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 Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. So today's topic is on Wednesday. It's the appearance day of Lord Nrsimhadev. And today we're going to speak a little bit about those pastimes. This is a nearest Sunday to that date. And then later on Wednesday we can speak more. Today I thought we'd speak about Prahlada Maharaj. When we glorify the Supreme Lord, we also glorify his devotees. And when we glorify his devotees, we glorify Lord Nrsimhadev, or the Supreme Lord. This is because there's an intimate relationship between the devotee and the Lord. It's like a diamond, a ring, a golden ring and a diamond. So the Lord is like the diamond and the ring is like the devotee. And when you put them together, it makes them look very nice, complete. So we can start with, this is the 10th chapter, text number 1. Sri Narada Uvacha Bhakti Yogasya Tat Sarvam Antaryartha Yatar Pakaha Manyamana Rishikesham Smayamana Uvachaha. Sri Narada Uvacha, Narada Muni said, Bhakti Yogasya, of the principles of devotional service. Tat, those blessings or benedictions offered by Lord Nrsimhadev. Sarvam, each and every one of them. Antaryatayaha, because of being impediments on the path of bhakti. Our Bakaha, Prahlada Maharaj, although only a boy, Manyamanaha, considering, Rishikesham, unto Lord Nrsimhadev. Smayamanaha, smiling. Uvacha, said. Ha, in the past. Translation. The Saint Narada Muni continued. Although Prahlada Maharaj was only a boy, when he heard the benedictions offered by Lord Nrsimhadev, he considered them impediments on the path of devotional service. Thus he smiled very mildly and spoke as follows. Report. Material achievements are not the ultimate goal of devotional service. The ultimate goal of devotional service is love of Godhead. Therefore, although Prahlada Maharaj, Dhruva Maharaj, Ambarish Maharaj, Yudhisthira Maharaj, and many devotee kings were materially very opulent, they accepted their material opulence in the service of the Lord, not for their personal sense gratification. Of course, possessing material opulence is always fearful, because under the influence of material opulence, one may be misdirected from devotional service. Nonetheless, a pure devotee, Anyabhilashita Shunyam, is never misdirected by material opulences. On the contrary, whatever he possesses, he engages 100% in the service of the Lord. When one is allured by material possessions, they are considered to be given by Maya. But when one uses material possessions fully for service, they are considered God's gifts or facilities offered by Krishna for enhancing one's devotional service. Om Yanti Mirandasya Vyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmaya Shri Guruve Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Auravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Astachade Shutarine Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Vasvi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Sri Narada Uvacha Bhakti Yogasya Tat Sarvam Antarayat Yar Ahaha Manyamano Vishikesam Smayamana Uvachaha. The saint Narada Muni continued, although Prahlada Maharaja was only a boy, when he heard the benedictions offered by Lord Nrsingadev, he considered them impediments on the path of devotional service. Thus he smiled mildly and spoke as follows. So, Yasyaham Anugrinami Harishetad Danam Shanai Tato Gyanam Tatantyasya Svajana Dukkha Dukhitam. So Krishna speaks to Lord Brahma. He says, when I especially favor somebody, I gradually take away all his opulence. And then in that poverty-stricken condition, his friends and relatives all desert him. And thus he is obliged to surrender to the Supreme Lord. He has no other shelter. So this is, Prabhupada was sitting in Vamsi, in the Vamsavat temple in Vrindavan, and he was remembering this verse, and he started to laugh because Krishna has actually deprived him of everything. And so he realized that he got Krishna's full mercy. Previously, he was becoming very successful as a businessman. Actually, his horoscope said that he would be he would be a multimillionaire, but that's ordinary calculations. When Krishna starts to take care of his devotee, then he says, when we clap our hands before the deities like this, all the lines on the hands change. In other words, our destiny changes. And so Prabhupada found himself, instead of being a multimillionaire, he was a mendicant with no income hardly in Vrindavan. And he realized that this is actually Krishna's special mercy. Now I've got no alternative but to get on with the mission of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He'd been trying to practice that mission throughout his whole life, but now, there was nothing to actually prevent him to fully engage. No family attachments, no business, nothing. And so Prabhupada was mildly amused at this, and he felt this was Krishna's mercy. And so this is what a devotee aspires for. One realization is that there's nothing in this world can actually help me. There's nothing in this world, no amount of wealth will buy what I need. No amount of material facilities will actually satisfy. They satisfy the mind for some time. But after some time, because they're not, they're really superficial things. They're not satisfying the heart. They're not satisfying the soul. It may satisfy the heart for some time also, but the real heart is Krishna consciousness. And when we satisfy that, or we nurture that relationship with the Supreme, because the Supreme is the source of all opulences, including all pleasure, all wealth, knowledge, renunciation, then we find real satisfaction. And so Prabhupada was feeling like that. But then again, here in this verse, we hear that Krishna is giving Prahlada Maharaj opulence. His father was the king of the universe, and now he's handing that throne over to his son, Prahlada Maharaj. So we may wonder why. And so it's described in this section of the Srimad Bhagavatam that Prahlada Maharaj is described actually early in the early chapters being a Nityasiddha, an eternally liberated soul, and that he was appearing in this world through the womb of Hiranyakashipu's wife, Kayadu, I think it was, to, perform a certain mission. The demigods, when they realized that the son of Hiranyakashipu was in the womb of this Mataji, they kidnapped her and they were dragging her away because their thoughts were, we can't kill a woman, but we don't want this rascal in the womb to, grow up, otherwise he'll terrorize the whole universe. Just like his father. If he knew what his father was like, he thought, like father, like son. So they were going to stamp out the cause of distress immediately. And so when they were dragging Kayadu, Narada Muni happened to be coming along. He always seems to be in the right place or in the wrong place at the right time, or the right place in the wrong time. It's a matter of proper understanding. But he was in the right place at the right time. And the demigod thought he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Because as soon as Narada Muni started, he said, what are you doing? This is most unfortunate that you're treating a woman like this. He said, why are you doing this? He says that, well, in the womb is the son of Hiranyakashipu. And so we're going to take her back to the heavenly planets, and as soon as he's born, we're going to kill him. And Narada Muni said, no. He says, this is not a demon in the womb, this is a great devotee. And so the demigods, they accepted that from Narada Muni. And Narada Muni said, I'll take care of this lady. And so at that, Narada Muni started to preach to Kayadu, because being a woman, she was very, she liked to serve. A woman's place, or a woman's natural propensity is to serve, and especially the husband or any of the guests who come to the house. It's the way they are. Just to go on the same point, Prabhupada was once on a plane journey with Shrutakirti. And Shrutakirti, she came, this stewardess came and said, is there anything you need? And Prabhupada said, could we have some hot milk? So Shrutakirti asked her for some hot milk. And she went away and came back with some glasses of hot milk, and then served them very nicely, and then started to go away. And Prabhupada says, just see, this is natural. It's not, women sometimes try to act out of character and be equal to the opposite gender. But Prabhupada was saying, no, naturally this is their particular strength that they serve. They serve the husband, they serve the guests, they serve. And so Prabhupada was emphasizing that point. And so because Kayadu, she served Narada Muni so nicely because he was a great sage, he started to preach to a transcendental knowledge. This is the duty of a mendicant, is that nothing's taken freely, but they're always distributing transcendental knowledge. for the benefit of society. And society, also for their betterment, they try to take care of the needs of the mendicant. And Prabhupada writes that it's not that the mendicant needs those things, because he's actually depending on the Supreme Lord, everything will be provided. But he accepts as a service for the benefit of the person who's serving. So Narada Muni started to preach, and Kayadu was actually not so attentive. Therefore, at the end of that preach, she didn't remember anything. And but in the womb was Prahlada Maharaj, and he was focused. He was listening to this preaching of Bhakti Yoga. And so immediately when he was born, he was actually a devotee of the Lord. So this is the story behind his appearance. But it says there that also that he was a Nityasiddha devotee. So this is the point that was being made, is that why is a Nityasiddha devotee having to take material opulences? So in this part of the Bhagavatam, it explains he was both. By nature, he was actually always thinking of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And because he was doing that, he was considered Nityasiddha. But he was actually a sadhana siddha. He was a conditioned devotee, in this pastime at least. And he was gradually, although he'd come to the point of always thinking of Krishna, and he was, like an iron in fire, always engaged in thoughts of the Lord, always in devotional service. The iron loses its material quality and becomes like the fire that it's in, becomes fire. So by nature, when we always think of Krishna, we're not actually spiritualizing our existence. So Prahlada Maharaj was like that. But because he was a sadhana siddha, he was practicing devotional service, the Lord wanted to actually purify him of any contamination which may be left. And therefore, after he'd killed Hiranyakashipu, he started to, nobody could pacify Nrsingadev. He was unpacifiable, if that's the right word. He was so angry that his pure devotee had been treated in such an untoward way that he was still on the Vyasasana. He was roaring. He was on the Vyasasana of Hiranyakashipu. He'd thrown the body of Hiranyakashipu away, and then some of his assistants approached. But Nrsingadev dealt with them the same he did with Hiranyakashipu, immediately killed them. So nobody was approaching now. Now there was just Lord Brahma left, and Lord Shiva, Indra, the Gandharvas, the Kinnaras, Lakshmi Devi. They were all there, but they wouldn't go near Lord Nrsingadev. They'd never seen somebody so angry. His eyes were enough to burn the whole planetary systems. And then after they all offered prayers, Lord Nrsingadev was still roaring in great anger. And so Lord Brahma pushed very mildly Prahlada Maharaj forward and said, "You can pacify him, you're his pure devotee." And so Prahlada Maharaj approached Lord Nrsingadev in that form. Can you imagine a huge form of the Lord with great nails and a lion's head? And he was completely fearless. And as soon as Lord Nrsingadev saw him coming near, immediately was pacified. And then he stroked Prahlada Maharaj on the head. And then the conversation started to ensue between Lord Nrsingadev and Prahlada Maharaj. And Lord Nrsingadev was so satisfied by Prahlada Maharaj's devotional service, he asked him to take a benediction. And this is where we are now, that the reply was that, automatically Prahlada Maharaj was just satisfied serving the Lord. This is a difference between material consciousness and spiritual consciousness. And this consciousness alone frees us from all material difficulties. By developing that consciousness, by practicing this process of sadhana bhakti, then all our desires are fulfilled in that service. And therefore, we're satisfied with the service, and automatically all the things we've maybe thought about in the past, they're not actually of any consequence anymore. But still, the seed is still in the heart. The seed of material desire is still there. We see the cycle which was given in Nectar of Devotion. Now, first of all, there's the inclination, which produces a seed of desire. And then that produces an activity, material activity, and that produces a reaction, what they call it, or Prahlada karma. But then, because the seed's in the heart, some things are not fulfilled straight away, and then they're called aparabdha karma. And then in due course of time, this aparabdha karma is manifested. And the results of that activity then create another impression in the heart or in the mind. This is called the proclivity or the kutta, the inspiration to increase that activity. And so it goes in a vicious circle of constantly increasing. This is why material desires will never satisfy. Because the more we enjoy, the more we try to enjoy, the proclivity increases. And so, the Lord understood this, and so he gave the benediction, and Prahlada Maharaj said, "Why should I offer a benediction? Why should I take a benediction?" He said, "This is business." He said, "A real servant doesn't ask for benedictions from the master, and a real master doesn't offer benedictions." In the material world, we'll offer benedictions to keep our prestige and keep our, everybody thinks that we're a good person and that we're a good master and like that. Everybody's proud of their situation. So in the material world, masters will offer benedictions like that. And Prahlada was relating to that. And he says that when one accepts these benedictions, then all the good qualities start to dwindle from the heart. Gradually one becomes materially conscious and absorbed in that way of thinking, and one slides into material consciousness. And so Prahlada Maharaj was frightened of that, being a devotee. He was frightened of developing this, what they call impression in the heart of material enjoyment. And he prayed to Lord Nrsimhadev like that. Yeah, sense-grata or lusty desires from material acquisition takes away and ruins all good qualities. So we're talking about transcendental qualities of Prahlada Maharaj. Just as in the 3rd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, it says, lust is never satisfied by any amount of sense gratification, just as a fire is never satisfied by any amount of fuel. So therefore, in this material world, we'll find that all traditions, all religious traditions, all genuine spiritual processes, they very much regulate material enjoyment, especially sex life. This is very, very dangerous. They regulate it so that gradually we take away the fuel which is causing the problem. So now we're in a process where we're regulating association with anybody else, this pandemic. Because if we associate, then it'll fuel the fire of this particular coronavirus. But if we take away the association, then the coronavirus will suddenly, or not suddenly, but gradually diminish. So the less we engage in materialist activities, the less we fuel the fire, and the heart becomes freed, the inclination, that's the word. The inclination to enjoy like that starts to subside. But Lord Nrsimhadev was adamant. He said, no, I order you to take this. So what could Prahlada Maharaj do? He accepted. Why? Because it's a form of purification. Just like Sudama Brahman was given a benediction of having an opulent place to live, beautiful. His wife was dressed in beautiful ornaments and given all facility. Because the Lord could see that in his heart there was still a bit of pride about his renunciation. And he wanted to put him in a situation where he had those material opulences which take away that pride. And also teach him how to use those opulences in a progressive way. So actually, this is the real benediction of the Lord. We said at the beginning of this class that Yashyaham Anugrinami Harishi Tad Anamshanai, that when I especially favour somebody, the Lord says, I take away all his opulences, material opulences. But actually, the real benediction is when he can give us those opulences and we're advanced enough to use them in his service. And then although there may be temptations and there may be pushings and pullings of the mind, this helps us to deal with that and become more Krishna conscious in a more difficult situation. We become more in control. It's easy to be renounced when we don't have anything. Some idiot may say, this is actually an example that Prabhupada gives. He can go into the Barclays Bank and say, I renounce all the money in this bank. But he hasn't got it in the first place. So yeah, he's renounced from it, but because he doesn't have it, what kind of renouncement is it? And probably the next thing they'll be, they'll lock him up. They'll think he's crackers. But people that's how people are. They're using everything in their service. And when they renounce something, they're thinking, I'm renouncing, but it's not theirs in the first place. So this is a devotee situation. He realizes he doesn't have anything anyway. It's just borrowed plumes from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is the consciousness that's been developed and that the Lord wants to further develop or show it, or at least show externally to people. This is how it's developed. By Prahlada Maharaj accepting the opulent situation and remaining Krishna conscious. Another example is that when Prabhupada, so this is opulence of renunciation. We'll speak about that a little more, but I'll just give you this example. Srila Prabhupada, he was residing in New York, and every day he used to go to walk to the Hudson River, to a park bench. And sometimes there was one subway conductor called Mr. Reuben, and they would discuss. And then one day Mr. Reuben said, Swamiji, you're not having any success. You've no followers. You've no real place to live. It's all temporary. So you're a long way from home, no friends. And Prabhupada said, oh, he says, I am very successful. And this bemused Mr. Reuben. So he said, how do you mean? He says that I'm living in this mad city of New York, the greater city, and yet I'm still Krishna conscious. So that's real opulence, when something opulent is presented, but we're able to reject it for the higher cost purpose of Krishna consciousness. So, in the cause of all bad qualities, what's the cause of all bad qualities first? This is a good quality of Prahlada Maharaj. One of the good qualities, he was renounced. And this is why he was actually equipoised in every situation. He wasn't attached to anything. But the beginning of all real bad qualities were when we become attached to one thing, and that is this body. If we become attached to this body, then we become attached to satisfying the needs of the body. And then the mind will become influenced to thinking with the body. And any dictates of the mind which come up to try and satisfy the needs of the body or the desires of the body, then we'll just actually follow the mind and get caught up in a whole cycle of, kuta, inspiration to do something, inclination to do something, seed of desire in the heart, action, reaction, later action, increased inclination, on and on and on. Just by identifying with the body, thinking, trying to hamper to its needs. So this is the process of devotional service called Yukta Vairagya. We need to hamper to the needs of the body as far as to keep healthy, to keep sane, to keep in a good situation in life for the purpose of rendering service. And that's the two rails. Then that service then purifies us from the bodily and the body and mind identification. So it's described in the Shastra, it's like an axe. An axe has a handle and it has a head. So to chop the very tree that produced the axe or the handle of the axe, we use the head of the axe and we chop down the tree which caused the problem in the first place. It put a handle on the axe. And so this is the nature of Yukta Vairagya, or using this body in a spiritual way. We use it in service. But we don't become attached to it. Because if we become attached to it, then what happens? What's the quality that immediately becomes prominent? Would anybody like to put it up on the jot board here, what they call it, the comment board? This is an advantage of YouTube. There's no voice response. Anyway, I'll tell you. It's fear. And fear is produced by contact with this body. We have to maintain the body. We have to protect the body. We have to provide for the body. And so this causes so much anxiety in how we're going to do that. And this is why, the more things we have to worry about, the more things absorb us in this bodily concept. Therefore, all spiritual processes, they deny only they allow only the basic necessities. But in Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada said this process is so powerful that we can have anything in devotional service. And we have the one saving factor that we understand who everything belongs to, and we engage it in the Lord's service, in the process of Yukta Vairagya. But still, it's a challenge. It's a challenge to develop that constant consciousness. That's why Prabhupada said we should always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna, because if we do, we remember the reality of the situation. As soon as we remember Krishna, we remember that everything belongs to Krishna, everything's meant for his service. And gradually by that process, we overcome all problems. But while we're in that situation of bodily consciousness, I've got a few notes here. There's one verse, Bhayam Dviti Abhanivasat Shat in the 11th canto. Fear arises when one thinks oneself a product of this material energy. So the reversal is to take shelter of a bona fide spiritual master who can guide us how to act in such a way that we become fixed in devotional service, in reality and not the service of the body. If we get fixed in devotional service, we forget the body or we forget the body's material anchorings and we just engage it in a devotional way. But when we don't do that, different kinds of fear come from, there's 9 different kinds of fear. So what are those 9 kinds of fear? What are we fearful? One thing. We're fearful of disease. At any moment, everybody at the moment is frightened of disease. You don't want to be contaminated. Any others? Disease is going to spoil the body, give me pain, take time off work, loss of wages, loss of holidays, loss of sense gratification, so I better remain fit. Fit so I can maintain my status quo in sense enjoyment. And it may even take away my life. What's the other one? Next one. Fear of dishonor. You know, in this world, this is what Lord Chaitanya said, there's 3 things, nadanam, najanam, nasundaram. Dhanam means wealth. Sundaram means attraction for the opposite sex. And jnanam means followers, people. To be honored by others. This is the most subtle one. Even if we give up attraction for wealth and attraction for the opposite sex, which is extremely difficult, we'll still feel like Prahlada Maharaj may have been feeling, and which Sudama Vipra was said to be feeling by the Acharyas, proud of his renunciation. Proud of his renunciation means he was feeling that others will respect him, will be honored in society. And for some people, they say honor is worse than death. To be dishonored is worse than death. So we always wanted to keep our status quo. Even in devotional service, we have particular, the ways we think people see us. It's like that, isn't it? We think people see us in certain ways, but we'd be surprised how people really see us. But, you know, we think people see us in certain ways, so we've got our status quo, our honor to keep, which means we've got to keep our false identification with this body. And therefore it stops us from acting on the platform of humility, at this false platform, bodily platform, or this subtle platform, which we don't even realize. So, yeah, we're proud of our position. So Lord Chaitanya said we should even give up that attachment to being something even in this movement. As, you know, a great preacher, a great example, a great temple president, a great pot washer, you name it, we become proud of. Did you know about so-and-so? You know, he washes the pot so well. Wow, you know. We become attracted to that type of fame. The whole world knows I'm such a great toilet cleaner. I'm such, you know. This is the tricks of the mind, but actually there's only us things like that. Most people think we should do a better job than what we are doing. So best not to be attracted to any honor or prestige in this world, because, you know, one day someone will come along and go, you stick the pin in, the big bubble will go, and it may go bang. So don't put ourselves in that situation. What's another thing we're fearful of? Disgrace. Especially in India, disgrace of family. Disgrace the whole family. That's what Arjuna was told by Krishna. Krishna said, oh, Bharat. They called him Bharat on one side, or son of Kunti, son of Kunti on the other side. From his mother's side, he had respectable parentage. And from his other side, he also was born in a very high-class dynasty. so he should do his duty. So, we're fearful of not doing our duty in this world. Similar to honour, very similar to honour. Then what's another thing? Wealth, if we're wealthy. How does wealth create fear? Miser, he locks his wealth away very carefully so that nobody else knows where it is. Because he knows if anybody finds out, then he's likely to lose it. And it's particularly, who are the biggest thieves? Don't tell everybody. Don't tell anybody I said this. Who are the biggest thieves? This is not my words, but it's a word of Shastra, okay? So don't. Hostile rulers. Hostile rulers. We can escape the general thieves but we can't escape the inland revenue. One day they'll catch up. They want their, and they're like, some people get away with it, but not many. If we have wealth, then we have to hide it. Otherwise, if people know we've got wealth, we'll make a lot of friends very quickly. And if they realize we've got no wealth, we'll lose a lot of friends very quickly. So, bodily identification and the things that money can buy. So we're fearful of losing it. Next, what's another one? There's some messages sent, but they've been retracted. Maybe I already said those ones. Another one. What about knowledge? People are proud of being knowledgeable. Barbara, Hare Krishna, I'm sorry, I'm tuning in. I will watch it all shortly. Okay. Fear of opponents. Keshava Kashmiri. He was traveling, there was another one, there was another Digvijay was traveling in, and he approached, he was traveling and he heard that in Vrindavan there was two great scholars. One was Sanat and one was Rupa Goswami. And so he thought, I've got to defeat these, otherwise I'll lose my name and fame. I'll lose my honor as a great knowledgeable person. And so he approached them and they were, writing the Shastras and they didn't even look up from their books, and he challenged them. And they said, you're better than us, it's not worth actually debating on Shastra with us because you'll defeat us easily. And so he said, okay, well, sign this piece of paper, say I've defeated you. And so he got the paper off the Outlook and signed the name and gave it him back. And he went on his way, skipping down the road, and Jiva Goswami got to know that his spiritual masters had signed a petition or a piece of paper saying that they had been defeated, and he was so angry. And so he volunteered to have a debate with this scholar, Digvijay, and he completely annihilated him. But when Sanat Goswami got to know, or when Rupa Goswami got to know, he told him to leave Vrindavan. He was too proud. And, Jiva Goswami didn't actually try to explain to him, but he took the words of his spiritual master as read and he left. So this hymn is Digvijay Keshava Kashmiri. When Lord Chaitanya Jasunva was talking to him, he started to defeat him. And all Lord Chaitanya's schoolboys, all his friends, they started laughing. But Lord Chaitanya said, no, don't laugh. He's a great Digvijay, so we should, have respect. So, we want to be respected. And Lord Chaitanya didn't want to take away the respect of Keshava Kashmiri. He wanted to maintain that. So we can be attached even to learning. What about beauty? What is a beautiful person frightened of? The more beautiful we are, the more we're frightened of old age. And the less beautiful we are, we actually probably welcome old age. It might actually improve things. You never know. You can't get much worse than what I am now. So yeah, I remember seeing on television, there was one program, and I thought, it was a couple of months ago, I went to visit my brother. I don't do this often, we were just on this visit. And there was this documentary on. And I thought, I know that person. It was a female, actually. And then I kept looking and looking. Oh, I thought she must be about nearly 80 now. But she looked a lot younger. You know, she had like all the neck had been tied up, facelift, you know, long hair, had been, and it was anyway. I'm not saying it was, but he used to be a model, and she was an actor as well, very beautiful actor. And I recognised that she tried to keep the same features, even though she was now in her 70s. And so, you know, you can see that people are frightened of old age. They're frightened of losing their things that they've acquired in this world. And last one, 9th one. Anybody think of another one that we find of? Somebody writes, you look very good, Dayananda. Oh, thank you. Oh, anybody, last one? Very subtle one. Power. We get, you know, we get power. We see politicians, even Stalin, all these great, powerful personalities, they hang on to it until death. They don't want to renounce. Dhritarashtra, typical example. His teeth were falling out. He could hardly see, he was deaf, but he was still wanting to maintain his status quo in the house of the Pandavas. But then by the mercy of Vidura, he was preached to and he left that situation. So yeah, we find the losing power. We get a position and we think this position's me, but it's all temporary. Even within this movement, any position that we may be awarded is not really a sign of spiritual advancement. The real sign is that we understand Lord Chaitanya's understanding of the situation. That we gopi bhatu kamalaya das namadas. That we're not a brahmachari, we're not a grihastha, we're not a vanaprastha, we're not a sannyasi, we're not a shudra, we're not a vaishya, we're not a brahman, we're not a kshatriya. We're a servant of the servant of Krishna. That's all we have to remember. And this is the only way we can get freed from this fear. Even in devotional circles, if we start to relate to the particular post that we have, then we'll become fearful that it'll be taken away. So there's a great opulence of the devotee, that Krishna engineers his life in such a way, like he did with Prahlada Maharaja, that he becomes freed from any attachments to anything. He's just satisfied to serve in whatever position Krishna wants him. Vasudeva Dutt's a typical example. He didn't have anything. What's another example? The one who we tried to steal banana plates from. I forget the devotee's name. I think you all remember. He was selling banana leaf plates. Oh, we were selling bananas, that's right. And Lord Chaitanya, as a young boy, used to come by and tease him every day. That's what it, not, Anyway, and so they used to barter for the price, and he said, I'm already selling them for less than anybody else. Give me a break, you know. Well, then Lord Chaitanya would actually steal them and run off. So he didn't have anything. Of course, this was on a different platform. He'd already renounced. And, you know, the devotee was actually experiencing great happiness in this reciprocation. So, you know, devotional service is a very exacting process, and this is shown in the life of Prahlada Maharaj. And Krishna takes away gradually everything, and then we're completely freed. No disease is safe unless it's completely obliterated. If there's one little piece of disease left in the body, it can grow. If there's one attachment that we have in this heart, then it can manifest again. This is why we're never completely safe until we at the lotus feet of the Lord. He says on the platform of prema, when we meet the Lord, we become purified from everything. But so in between time, Prabhupada said, the only safe place is at the lotus feet of the Lord. He says you should stick very tight and don't venture away from the lotus feet of the Lord, and then we're safe. So, you know, in one respect, Prahlada Maharaj, he was freed. He wasn't frightened of disgracing his family, Hiranyakashipu's family especially. Because Hiranyakashipu said you were a disgrace to the family. You were an enemy of this family because you an enemy of Hiranyaksha. Prahlada Maharaj was thinking, what is this enemies? Friends and enemies. He said, I don't like this idea of friends. And we have no enemies in this world and we have no friends. So this was his vision of a Mahabhagavat. He's seen everything in relationship to Krishna. And by this process, you know, gradually everything we become focused in that line of thinking. In the Upanishads we've just been speaking about, everything becomes crystal clear. There's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and there's me and his other servitors, of course. And the only thing that exists, I just have to serve. Whatever the Lord wants me to do, let me just serve him in that way. And there's nothing else in the way. But as soon as we identify with this body, boom, there's a whole sphere of activity become manifested, beginning with desire to satisfy the body. And built on this reflection of desire, the whole gambit of material activities become manifested. If there's no desire, there's no material desire, there's no material world, even though we may be in it. So our desire is to become fully Krishna conscious, like Prahlada Maharaj is being coached to by, or given the opportunity by the Lord. Well, the Lord treats his devotee like Prahlada Maharaj in such a way that to teach us a lesson, that he's completely freed from material desire. He wasn't even fearful of his body. So how did he need to be purified? So this is a pastime of the Lord to teach society that we can still have these opulences in this world. Nothing's an impediment to devotional service. A pratihara and a hoitaki, it's a hoitaki, a pratihata. It cannot be interrupted, and it's not due to anything. In any situation we can perform it. And so the Lord was doing that. He was completely free from fear that, you know, can you imagine? We can say, well, yeah, I'm not fearful of this, I'm not fearful of that. But then when we put into the situation, just see how things change. When Prabhupada was once talking and he was asked a question by one of the audience and he started saying, I'm not fearful of death. Prabhupada was talking about death. And all Prabhupada's disciples started laughing. And Prabhupada started laughing. And this person then he had to actually have me, all right. I'm fearful of death. Yeah, and we can say we're not fearful until the time comes and see how fearful we are. Because we're attached to the body. But he wasn't even fearful of death, Prahlada Maharaj. He was completely in equilibrium. He says that his bodily necessities, just like a child is on the lap of its mother, on the lap of its mother, he doesn't even think about where his maintenance is coming. All of a sudden there's some food, and then, there's some a bath, fresh clothes, everything has been provided for. He doesn't even know how it's happening. It's all happening. He says, this is how the Lord takes care of a fully surrendered soul. He says, everything's been provided automatically. And so Prahlada Maharaj was on that platform where everything was being provided. And he was just in Samadhi, he was just absorbed in service. And therefore he wasn't concerned about the body. Whether the body existed or not, his service to Krishna would carry on. Whether it was actually in a material body, through a material body or so-called material body, or in an original spiritual body. He wouldn't even notice. And so therefore, he got spears and they tried to run him through. They put him under the feet of an elephant. They put him in a pit of snakes. They threw him off the top of a mountain. Threw him off the top of the mountain. Fed him poison. You name it. And then Hiranyakasipu, he's pretty intelligent. At some point, he thought, we're not going to be able to do anything here. And so it's nothing he could do. Let's remember this, is nobody can hurt us, only ourselves, only our own consciousness. And so he just piped in, he just thought, and he said he was full of fear. His little 5-year-old boy was completely fearful of him. Even Indra, the king of heaven, he would shake just by the raising of the eyebrows of Hiranyakasipu. And here's this little boy, he's not fearful of anything. Why wasn't he fearful? Because he was absorbed in Krishna. Completely absorbed in devotional service. And so that's a real quality. Be fully absorbed in Krishna's service, and then we become free from bodily identification, just like Prahlada Maharaj. And then automatically everything's provided. You can all take the Python vow. We just go into the middle of Whalley Range or into the middle of Manchester and we just lie down on the street. We remember Krishna. And then, people will come along and they'll supply everything for us. So there's 1 or 2 people in Manchester who are on that platform, maybe. Maybe it's not the Python vow, though. No, a devotee doesn't take the Python vow, but internally he does. He realizes that we don't have to worry about our maintenance, actually. We just have to worry about making a facility for our devotional service and making a facility to give this process to everybody else. And if we're actually fixed on that platform, we'll realize that that's been provided anyway. And the only reason there's any lacking is because of our lack of Krishna consciousness. Krishna won't give us things, won't give us a needful unless we are not going to be affected by them. If he gives us things prematurely, it'll spoil our devotional service and spoil the whole preaching program. So that's one reason. The other reason is he wants us to endeavor. That endeavor will purify us from all the unwanted things in the heart. That's why another reason that things don't. And the biggest thing in the heart is attachment to this body, mind, and intelligence. So, another example of the child on the lap of the mother. We're talking about sannyasi now. So I've got the sannyas gear. But, you know, we're all, if we're following this process of devotional service, Prabhupada says, we're all actually sannyasis. It's a process of nivriti marg, nothing for me, everything for Krishna. We negate everything. We don't negate it, but we use everything in Krishna's service. So grihasta, vanaprastha, sannyasi, brahmachari, the same mentality is there. But particularly in this verse, he's talking about the duties of different orders in Bhagavad Gita, the items of knowledge, and one is the three qualities of a sannyasi. He said the sannyasi can go into the middle of the jungle and not be frightened. You know, in the middle of the jungle, there's so many wild animals, so many snakes, you know, so many, even the plants are poisonous. There's danger at every step. He says, but he realizes that actually Krishna's in the heart. He's in the heart of all these animals. And if I'm in this situation, then Krishna must want me to be in this situation. So I just depend on Krishna. He's in the heart of the tiger, and he's in the heart of the snake. So if Krishna wants to kill me, there's nothing I can do. So, you know, we don't prematurely put ourselves into difficulty. This is not the platform. But if we find ourselves in a situation, we have to understand that, you know, Krishna's in the heart. He can protect me. I remember once I was doing, this was a brahmachari training of 35 years ago. There were no books. We had a roll of paintings. And I was in Liverpool. All the Liverpool crowd, Haribo. I was in Liverpool, actually I was on the Wirral. On the Wirral. The Wirral was very opulent at that time. Heswall, anybody know where Heswall is? And it was the evening, and I was going around to all these big houses. And I came to this house, and it got the press button, but there was no answer. But then the door was up. Oh, huge walls with, well, there wasn't barbed wire on top, but, you know, it was like, when I went in, it was, yes, Barbara lives on the Wirral. So the Wirral's a very auspicious place. It's been purified by Barbara's chanting. But at that time, you know, it wasn't so purified. And so I thought, oh, I'll look inside. And I looked inside. This huge house. I thought, I can't miss this opportunity. Maybe the buzzer wasn't working. So then I shut the door behind. And then I saw this big Alsatian. And it was just looking at me. And for some reason, you know, I didn't actually, the penny didn't drop. I just carried on walking. And this Alsatian was watching me all the way. And I rang the bell on the door, and there was nobody in. And then I looked at the Alsatian, and it was still watching me. And then I walked back out and went through the door. And then, you know, I shut the door behind me. And then I walked to the next. I thought, wait a minute, what have you just done? That Alsatian could have ripped me to pieces. So I wasn't on the platform of Prahlada Maharaj. Well, the same principle is there that, you know, for some reason, you know, Krishna took pity on me and said to the Alsatian, you know, leave this one alone, he hasn't got much intelligence. So like that. But Krishna's in the heart. And therefore, this is a quality of abhayam, fearlessness. So Prahlada Maharaj had all these good qualities. And this one is in particular that is known as one of the Mahajans. We were speaking about that the other day, our Karshana was. And his particular quality is smaranam, remembering the Lord. So remembering the Lord is the goal of all the Vedic scriptures. If we remember Krishna, then we can remember the real situation, and we can act accordingly. just remembering the take shelter of the Lord's lotus feet. So I'll stop there. There's much more we could say, but one more thing, it says that Prahlada prayed to Hiranyakashipu. He prayed to Lord Nrsimhadev. You can give, if you really want to give me a benediction, I pray for the benediction that although my father was purified by the touch of your transcendental nails, just by being on your lap, but still he acted disrespectfully towards you. So therefore he's still, has some sinful reactions. So can you free him from all his sinful reactions? And Lord Nrsimhadev said that actually because of the pure devotee son like you, he's already freed from all reactions. So a devotee is not just responsible for himself, he's responsible for his forefathers. It says that because you're such a pure devotee, 21 generations of past forefathers will be purified. So how did he explain that? We can sometimes see back to our grandfather and even great-grandfather, but not usually beyond that. So that's like 4 or 5 generations. And so Narada Muni explained to Yudhisthira Maharaj that what is meant here is that he'll go back 7 generations and pure 7 generations of the immediate dynasty. And any other dynasty or any other family that we appeared in, it'll purify another 7 generations in that family. Then we go beyond that, and any other family that we've appeared in previous lives, it'll pure 7 generations of that family also. And in some parts of the Srimad Bhagavatam, it says 100 generations. In other parts, it says 14 generations, some parts 7 generations. So we have to see what the pastime is. But in this particular one, 21 generation. So a devotee has great responsibility. We're responsible for purifying not just ourselves, but others also. So thank you for listening. I don't know whether you have questions on this forum. Does anybody write questions and answers, or do we just wind up? Actually, you do have questions. I know that Karshina was telling me that you did. You just have to wait a little while, is that right? I'll just wait a few minutes and then we'll close down if there's nothing else. There's one comment here. Thank you, Maharaj. That means there's no questions. Prashadam time, is it? Prashadam's going cold. Okay, thank you for joining with us, everybody. So we'll meet again, or we'll meet to talk about Prahlada Maharaj on Wednesday morning, and then on Wednesday evening for more nectar from the appearance day of Lord Nrsimhadev. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.